Hey, seventh graders, today we are looking at multiplying integers. All right, so to get started here, I have four examples up here. And the only thing that's different on these is the signs. So what I'd like you to do now is go ahead and use a calculator or whatever and pause your video and see if you can come up with the answers for each of these problems. So go ahead and pause your video and give it a shot. All right, and when you do these, you should notice that your number for all of these is 6, but your sign is different. So the first one, we have a positive number times a positive number, and we get a positive 6. The second one, we have a negative number times a positive number, we get a negative. Positive times negative is negative, and lastly, negative times negative gives us a positive. So how can we sum this up? And here's our big idea for today, is our rules for multiplying integers. And the idea is that if our signs are the same, our product is going to be positive. Okay? So if when we multiply two numbers together, if their signs are the same, we're going to get a positive number. If their signs are opposite, we are going to get a negative number. And that's the big idea for today. Another idea to think of this, or way to think of this, is kind of like emojis, right? If you look at a emoji where like the eyes are the same, right? Like these ones over here, okay? You think of that as like a happy face, right? But if you see where your eyes are different, okay, it's kind of a sad face, right? So two of the same, right, or two negatives or two positives make a positive. And then if you only have one negative, or if they're opposite, our answer stays negative. So, how could we think of this another way? Well, if you think of even the English language, how you would say something, okay? So if I asked you to please do your homework, right, this is a positive statement, right? Please do your homework, okay? If I look at this next one here, please do not do your homework. This is telling you not to do something, so it is negative, right? So in other words, we have one negative here, okay? But if I look at the last one, it says, please do not do your homework, okay? That means don't not do it, right? Which means we have two negatives, which means, well, a double negative in English, they cancel out, right? And we get a positive statement. So that's kind of another way to think of how we can do these. Let's look at some examples. So again, what we're looking for is how many negatives do we have? So if I look at my first example here, right, 3 times negative 5, I have one negative number, so that means it's going to be negative, or I could say their signs are opposite, so it's negative. 3 times 5 would be 15. Why don't you pause your video and give the second one a chance? All right, and since our signs once again are opposite here, we have a negative and a positive, our answer would be negative, and 6 times 7 is 42. So negative 42 is our solution. One more set of examples here. Why don't you try both of these on your own? So pause your video and give it a shot. All right, if we look at our first one over here, we have two negatives, meaning the signs are the same, which means we're going to get a positive number. 9 times 3 is 27. For our second example here, negative times a positive is going to be a negative. Okay. And then 4 times 12 is 48. All right, now we're going to look at a slightly different example, and this is one with exponents. And when we're dealing with exponents and negative numbers, we have to be super careful. Okay. Now remember our definition of exponent, or in this case a squared, right? A squared exponent of 2 means we're going to take a number times itself twice. That's what that 2 means. So here, what am I taking square? What am I squaring? What am I taking to the second power? In this case, since the negative 4 is in parentheses, it's the whole thing. So I'm taking negative 4 times negative 4. So if I have a negative times a negative, that would be a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. So my answer is here. Now, if you look at what is different on the second example over here, well, I don't have parentheses here. And the squared is only on the 4. So this is really like negative 4 squared, or I could think of the 4 itself being in parentheses. Okay? So now here I would take, well, 4 squared would be 4 times 4, which is 16, but I have a negative in front. Okay, so while the value was the same, the sign was different based on if that negative is included in the squared or not. So be careful in this in your mastery and on your assignment today. And the last ones I wanted to look at here is, well, what happens if we have more than one, or if we have things like order of operations? Okay, so let's look over here. Let's look at our first example. Okay, well, whenever we multiply things, we can only do two things at a time. So that's where our rules come from. So multiply, what if I do these from left to right? So negative 3 times negative 6, well, negative times negative is a positive. So I would get positive 3 times 6 is 18, and then I would multiply by 4. So in this case, I'm taking positive 18 times positive 4, which I can multiply to get a positive number, and this would give me 72. That's my solution. Okay. For our second one over here, again, we're going to follow our order of operations, which, remember, we have PEMDAS, right? Okay. So I do have parentheses, but they're just around one number here, which means it's really just multiplication. So I can kind of ignore those for now. All right. So I'm going to look at my exponents first, which would be 2 squared, which is 4. So I have 1 plus 2 times negative 3, and then times 4. Okay. So now, parentheses we talked about, exponents are done. Now I can look for multiplication and division. And everything here is multiplication. So if I do those, well, 2 times negative 3 would be negative 6, and then I still have a times 4. So I've got to finish my multiplication, so I multiply these together. Negative 6 times 4 would be negative 24. And lastly, I can do my subtraction. 1 minus 24 would be negative 23.